Hold on.
Sorry.
Hold on. All right. Take two. Welcome back to reserve seating. Not our second. Well, let me do that again. Hello, everybody. Welcome to reserve seating. Do you ever get the feeling that Orville Redenbacher is just looking down and laughing at us? Reserve seating starts now. Welcome, everybody, to Reserve Seating. We are joined by a very special guest this week, somebody long overdue that having him on Reserve Seating, and a super great friend of the show, Mr. Dana Buckler of the Dana Buckler Show. How are you doing today, Dana?
Adam, Rob, I'm doing fantastic. And we were just talking, Rob, this is actually the first time you and I have ever interacted with each other. And I
True.
just
Yeah.
want to say on the record, I'm a big fan of yours. I love it when you're on the show. I love it when Adam's on the show. I love F this movie, period. I mean,
Sure.
that's the podcast that inspired me to want to get into podcasting. So to be sitting here talking to you two gentlemen, this is a big deal for me. So thank you for
That's
having me.
that's awesome. Thank you so much, Dana. We are huge fans of yours as well.
Thank
Goes
you.
without saying, it's very good to have you on the show finally. And I'll just speak for Adam and say you're welcome back anytime, which is a big thing before we started, because you could like totally just screw the pooch in the next like 15 minutes, and we might not
Absolutely.
really even want you back. But I'm extending the invitation to you anyway.
All right, that's listen, not that I was feeling any pressure going into this. I
You
feel
better,
fine now. I
you better
got
nail
this.
it now, buddy.
I
Because if
got it.
there's one thing that reserve seating is, it's uh,
Integrity.
principled. We have integrity. We don't mess around. But anyway,
We are popping off this episode. I don't know why I'm doing the Orville Redenbacher thing so much. It's a crutch. I'm nervous because Dana's here. Anyways,
should roll.
so we are doing a repeat of an episode that we did last year. That was a lot of fun. Last year it was our favorite movies from the year that we turned 22 years old to celebrate 2022. This year, it's the movies that were our favorites the year that we turned 23 years old to celebrate 2023. So I think we should go with our special guest first.
Oh, obviously.
Lay
Absolutely.
this out in chronological order here.
Sure,
Absolutely.
sure.
Dana, 2001, big year. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Mulholland Drive. None of those are your favorites. What is your favorite movie of 2001?
It's interesting because when you broached the subject to me and said, this is what we're going to be doing, you said your favorite movie. I had to do, first of all, I had to do the math because I got a little bit panicked when I realized that 2001 was 23 years ago for me. Okay, so I just want to point that out. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, yes, I'm in my mid 40s. I'm dealing with it. It's a daily process. Having said that, when I did the math and figured out that 2001 was the year, there wasn't even like I didn't even have to do like a Google search. What
Yeah.
movies came out that year? Because I remember the movie that impacted me the most, and it's still a movie that I watch at least, I kid you not, twice a year. It's one of the most powerful films I've ever seen, and that is the 2001 movie featuring Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke. Of course, I'm talking about Training Day, and I think it is just one of the most brilliant performances. And it's a movie that rewards you the more times you watch it, because the
Hmm.
more times you see it, the more you see the entire foundation that's being laid out in front of you. And I got excited just to be able to share the gospel of Training Day with not only the two of you, but also everyone watching at home.
So I have a question for you, Dana, because this is something I was thinking about in the car in relation to Denzel Washington and Training Day.
Yes.
Had he ever done another villain part before or after this?
And that's one of the things that I don't really think so, because Denzel's kind of like he's kind of like Tom Hanks in a way, where Tom Hanks is always playing,
Just like
that likable guy, that affable, charismatic guy, and that was Denzel's bread and butter. I mean, he played an incredibly serious role in 1989's Glory, the Edward Zwick directed
Yeah.
film, and he's incredible in that. But throughout the 2000s, I mean, excuse me, throughout the 90s, no, I think he was pretty much just the charming guy we all expect him to be. So to see him take this turn
Mhm.
and be rewarded by the Academy, with the Best Picture, I mean, I think that's what makes this movie so special, is because you really are taken out of left field.
Yeah, it's interesting because like he had played either before, like in Courage Under Fire, or after like Out of Time or Flight or Pelham 123's remake, like flawed characters, like flawed protagonists, but never somebody just kind of gleefully evil. And I almost think like he did it so well in Training Day that it's like, what other ground is even left for him to explore, like in the villainous part? So like it's such a, of the 21st century especially, I think it's such a seminal performance that like really hasn't been matched by a whole lot of, you know, movie like acting in commercial movies since then.
Yeah. I'm going to pose this question to you guys at some point about, where do you think the decade of the 2000s stands in as far as cinema history, as we're approaching, 15 years, nearly 15 years removed from it. But what Denzel played in this movie, and I was thinking about it a lot today, he played that classic 1970s anti-hero, which made all of, those amazing 70s movies. You couldn't take your eyes off these guys, even though they were despicable, horrible human beings. Like every time I watch Training Day,
Mm-hmm.
I still, like, for the first 30 minutes of the movie, think Denzel, you know what? He's not that bad. But he's a good guy,
Yeah.
and then of course, because he's just so charismatic. But the anti-hero is something that we haven't had in a long time. And his movie might represent, putting Tarantino films aside, his movie might represent one of the last like big anti-hero performances that was, recognized by the Academy.
The first 30 minutes of the movie, you're with them. You're Ethan Hawke and you're with them and you're listening and you're observing. And I can't speak for you guys, but I'm sure it's a similar situation. I've definitely had those male role models in my life walking me through a process in like a jocular way, like getting me used to a job or a position, and like me being uneasy about it, me not knowing, like, I don't know if I approve of what this guy's doing, but like I also know I have to assimilate with this routine. And one of the things I think Training Day does so well is that pitches that tension where it takes you a little while to be like, no, this guy's horrible. Like, no, wait, no, 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 no. Like, it's not just like I need to learn to get down with what he's doing. It's no, this guy's a villain. Like,
There's that underlying thing where it's like, in order for Ethan Hawke's character to advance in his career, he has to go along.
yeah,
He has to play along. He has to assimilate. He has to enable. And how fucked up that is, that like, it's a career starting or ending opportunity based on how much evil you can let in.
exactly.
But I've further, upon multiple viewings of this film, I've come to the realization that I think Denzel Alonso in this movie is going so over the top with him, not because that's the way that, that's the way the job is done, because he's known from the second he meets him at the diner that Jake is going to be dead by the end of today. So I can just
Oh,
I can just mess with this guy as much as I want because he's going to be dead. Because not excuse me, not until you watch the film a second time and you realize that this is all a setup. This entire thing is for Alonso to get the money, have Jake take the fall for it. So I mean, I just think it's incredible. Like it's bizarre. It's incredible.
2005 was the year I turned 23. My favorite movie has changed quite a bit
Yeah.
from that year, because originally it was Match Point, and I feel gross enough just revisiting Match Point where I can't even say like, and it would like break my heart if it was still my favorite movie. So like, I don't know. It's weird. I'm just so yeah, let's just move on. The one that I go back to the most is a movie that we've already covered on reserve seating, but in written form, and that's John Singleton's Four Brothers, which is a movie that just never gets old for me. I've seen it probably a half dozen times now, and I just rewatched it this weekend. And the thing that I just admire about it, and I'm repeating myself because I mentioned this in the column, is Singleton sort of like gave me the key to unlock this movie, which is he's like, I made a Saturday night special, which is basically like, exactly what you want to get out of this movie. You see it on a Saturday night with your girlfriend or your partner or your friends or something like that, and it delivers exactly what you want every time. And that's why I love so much about this movie. I think that the four brothers, played by Mark Wahlberg, Andre Benjamin, Tyrese Gibson, and Garrett Hedlund, have like a really fun, brotherly, easygoing chemistry with one another. I don't think that I've seen like Tyrese this good since Four Brothers. Like Singleton, like really kind of, I think, brings out the best performances in him in particular. And Wahlberg is just like a force of nature in this movie, and he's so perfectly cast. And I'm not always a Mark Wahlberg fan, but like when you put him in the right part, there's few people as good as he is. And it's just like, it's got roots in like the Western formula, so it plays out like that. And I mean, it's just filled with interesting supporting characters and character actors. And Chiwetel Ejiofor is like really kind of like, he was in Dirty Pretty Things before this, but he's like really kind of like putting himself on the map in like a studio movie as like an Alonzo Harris type of villain. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about this movie. It just is so rewatchable, and it stood the test of time in terms of being my favorite from that year.
So much of it is for me the Wahlberg performance, because I do think this is the one time where Wahlberg is like pitch perfect. Like he's exactly he the character and the performance match. Like to me, it's also The Departed, just because The Departed is just so just heightened. But this would be second for me, where it's just like he is just a pig in shit. Like he is just doing his thing, and he's exactly the energy that the movie needs in exactly the right way. Because it is
such a good specificity of place. Like it's a cliche when people would say like, New York is a character in this movie, but like in Training Day, LA is a character, and in Four Brothers, Detroit is a character, down to the Motown music and the soundtrack and everything like that. And I love that set at winter, and there's like car chases in the snow. And
A couple of things, because I finished watching Four Brothers about an hour ago.
okay.
Okay, and this was my first time watching the movie since seeing it in the theater in 2005. I cannot stress the importance to everyone listening that if you saw a movie one time in the theater 18 years ago, it's important you watch it again, because it was like watching this movie for the first time. I have lived so much life in that 18-year period
sure.
that I couldn't even like I was watching this film for the first time. I did not know how it was going to end. I did not know, who was involved with what. I mean, I thought the whole situation with Andre was, it's like, oh yeah, that's it. It's him. And I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't seen the movie. But I'm watching this film like I don't remember anything about this. I just remember that I saw it. Now, having said that, I love this film.
Yeah.
Good.
I loved it. I
Awesome.
clearly loved it more than I did 18 years ago, because this is my first time rewatching it. It was one of those films. And 2005, like you said, Adam, that was a year. I mean, what the nominations for Best Picture that year were Brokeback Mountain, Munich, Capote, Good Night and Good Luck. I mean, Crash.
Don't mention what won. Don't mention.
Oh yeah, let's not
So-
talk.
But I remember seeing this in the film theater and just going, it is what it is. Now
Sure.
I'm watching this going, why
Yeah.
are we not getting more movies like this?
Yeah.
Please, why are we not getting this? Was back at a time when a studio like Paramount would give Singleton or any director,
Mhm.
60-70 million dollars on the hopes that this movie might make a couple hundred million.
This would be a
And
Redbox movie today.
it would totally be a Redbox
Or
movie.
Hulu original.
And you know what? It would have a cult following.
Yeah.
There'd be people in our circles that would talk about the film, but to the mass public, no one would be talking about the movie. I remember I wrote this note down. Ask Adam, what genre of movie is this? And this is not an insult to the movie, because
Sure.
it's a thriller, it's a comedy, it's an action. And the action, like you said, that chase in the snow. I grew up in Canada. You
Mhm.
live in Chicago. You're in Philly. We all know snow. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the fact that they made it as long as they did in that chase, which appeared to be a few miles, is remarkable in its own.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I think that it's got, I would never categorize it as a Western, but like it has the tropes of a Western. It
Yeah.
definitely has like the hangout of like a posse sitting around a campfire and then like getting into action with the bandits and things like that. But yeah, I mean, like I have it on my action shelf. It's Singleton was an underrated action director. I mean, like he came onto the scene, as with Boys in the Hood, which was a personal project of his, but it's sort of, and I'm not saying this is a negative because I think he enjoyed being in this position, but he became sort of like a social message movie director for a long time. And he definitely always had, from what I've read, you know, a genre, uh, journeyman spirit to him that he wanted to get out of the system. And I'm happy at least that we had Shaft and Too Fast, Too Furious, and Four Brothers out of it.
Yeah.
So, Rob, what is your pick from 2009?
2009, like Dana's, was basically a no-brainer for me. It is Quentin Tarantino's masterpiece, Inglourious Basterds. I have long maintained that this is his best film. I still believe that this is his best film. I adore this movie. I think it's the best of Tarantino. Obviously, you can't argue with Pulp Fiction, and as Patrick always says, your favorite Tarantino movie is usually whichever one you're watching, and I can definitely get behind that. But the one thing I did want to bring up with Inglourious Basterds, not only the performances, not only the screenplay, I had to go back and remind myself that this didn't win Best Original Screenplay, which is just like the Hurt Locker is a good movie and all, but what are we doing? I want to give a special shout out to Sally Menke, editor Sally Menke. This was her final project working with Tarantino. And while I love the movies largely that Tarantino has made since then, you can feel her absence in every one of them. Every one of the movies since Inglourious Basterds, you can feel Sally Menke's absence. And I say that not necessarily as negative criticism, but there is a flow to Tarantino's films since then that is much different, and I have a feeling that he has more of a heavy hand. He's got his thumb on the scale a little bit more than someone like Sally Menke, who was married to a director and was a professional editor for a long time and knew maybe how to put a younger filmmaker, remind him what the story needs. And I think this is one of her masterpieces as well. I think this is an incredibly well edited film. I think it's an incredibly literate film, an incredibly well written film. I adore Inglourious Basterds. I think it's amazing.
If you were forced to pick, which section of the movie do you like the most? Is it the Melanie Laurent section? Is it the Brad Pitt section?
It's the basement scene. It's the bar. It's because while the opening scene with Hans Landa is amazing, and as you said, I mean, every scene, the Brad Pitt introduction is great. The basement Mexican standoff scene, if you even want to call it that, it's more of a sequence. Is so multifaceted, is so just the way that pitch changes, like when the SS guy comes out from the back room, just the energies, and that's the best of Tarantino's writing. Tarantino knows how to sort of change gears within one scene so well, and introduce characters, change your thoughts about characters. I can't even really. I mean, we'd have to just sit and watch it. It was just amazing.
He's really good at staging and writing, like, the consequences of microaggressions. Where it's like something kind of under the surface happens, whether it's like a turn of a phrase or a certain word that you said that one word too many, or a look or a number of fingers or something like that, where it just completely changes the temperature of the room. And that sequence is like a masterclass of suspense, and it's great.
I'm right there with you, Rob, in the fact that I consider this amongst Tarantino's best. I really do. But speaking of, we're going to talk about the basement sequence. In my opinion, Michael Fassbender's never been better in anything he's ever done, post or pre this particular scene. The moment that gets me every time is at this point, they're pointing the guns at each other. The guns are being pointed at each other. There's tension. The bartender knows what's going on. And Fassbender says to the SS officer, here's what's going to happen. You and I are going to go, we're going to walk outside. And the German officer, he knows. He goes, no. No matter what happens, you and I, we're not going anywhere.
We're both dead.
And you see the look in Fassbender's eyes when he accepts his fate. And he doesn't speak it, but you see it. And it gets me every time. And I'm always curious to know how much of that was Tarantino. Like, how many times did they shoot that particular scene? He just has this acceptance where he just sort of nods his head and then he starts speaking English. That is one of the most powerful scenes.
I want to shout out real quick because we're using his character, not explaining who he is. August Deal as the SS officer is great in that scene.
Yeah, it's interesting because that look almost like relieves the tension for a moment, because it's like the what if element of it all is gone, and like you just know, and it's like it's easier for you to deal with death if you know that it's right here and it's going to happen.
He says,
That's why our boy John Travolta stands in front of that rocket and Broken Arrow and takes it in the stomach, and he's smiling because he's just like, I'm going to enjoy this. If it's going to happen, I'm going to enjoy it. While we have a couple minutes, I don't know if I've changed all that much as a moviegoer since I turned 23, but what do you guys think? Like, do you think that you're the way that you watch movies or kind of like determine which are the ones that you love has changed all that much in the time?
I'll go. Okay. The short answer, absolutely.
Mhm.
And I'm going to cite a perfect example, and I'm going to lose some of my movie credibility with what I'm about to tell you. I just watched Annie Hall for the first time this weekend. I
Yeah.
had never seen that movie.
Mhm.
And I just, watching it as a 44-year-old versus watching it as a 20-year-old, I don't know if the movie would have had the same effect on me.
Yeah.
I am not the same person I was when I was 23. I
Mhm.
watch movies completely differently. Movies that I didn't like back then, I love now, and vice versa. So yeah, I'm a completely different movie watcher at 44 years old.
Yeah.
I'll just echo what Dana said. I'm in exactly the same boat. You learn, you change. And my favorite thing is that the movies that grow with you, the movies that you can
Yeah.
then rewatch and say, wow, I see this in a completely different light than I did before. And those are the best ones.
Yeah, for me, it's the thing that's interesting is I don't feel like I've changed that much, and I think I've just gotten swolled up. Like in the stuff that I loved before, I love it that much more, and I think a lot of it has to do with they just kind of were around during seminal moments of my young life, and now if I'm looking at the movies from the 2020s or something like that, like I have less like maybe life signposts thus far in this decade, so like these movies like are harder for me to remember and things like that. But I just want to say again, thank you, Dana, for joining us.
Yes, thank you for
First,
having me.
yeah, we will have you back very soon.
Absolutely.
Dana, tell everybody where we can find you on the internet.
Sure. All right. Well, the Dana Buckler Show podcast is available wherever you find your podcasts. If you want to follow me on Twitter, just go to @DanaBucklerShow. I'm also on Instagram @DanaBuckler, and look forward to just look forward to talking again, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So, Rob, until next time,
Orville Redenbacher.
suck it.
Take that.
Take that.
These seats are reserved.
Bears have #1 pick.